Hi, welcome to China Currents. I'm Chris. Last week, on August 27th, U.S. Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo arrived in Beijing, commencing a 4-day visit to China. She was the fourth senior U.S. government official to visit China since June, following Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen, and U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate John Kerry. Her visit includes stops in Beijing and Shanghai, where she held discussions with Chinese government officials and meeting with American companies operating in China, which, by the way, was highlighted by her visit to the Shanghai Disneyland. Raimondo is in charge of the economic and trade sectors that are of mutual interest to China and the United States. Additionally, her portfolio covers the area of technology exports, which is a focal point in Sino-American relations due to U.S. exports controls. Consequently, Raimondo's visit to China has garnered significant international attention, with anticipation expressed by media outlets all over the world. On August 28th, U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo met with China's Minister of Commerce Wang Wentao in Beijing. Before Raimondo's visit, the U.S. Commerce Department announced it had lifted 27 Chinese entities out of the so-called unverified list, which restricts the entities to access exports from the U.S. China and the U.S. agreed to set up a working group to enable officials and business representatives on both sides to find solutions on trade and investment issues and to advance U.S. commercial interests in China. The group will meet twice a year starting in early 2024. And Gina Raimondo said Monday that it is profoundly important for China and the U.S. to have a stable economic relationship. China remains America's third largest export market, buying more than $150 billion of products from U.S. farms and businesses. Exports to China support more than 80,000 jobs in the United States and benefit small as well as large firms. Following her meeting with Chinese Minister of Commerce on August 29th, Gina Raimondo met with Chinese Premier Li Qiang in Beijing. The meeting aimed to foster enhanced cooperation between the two economic powerhouses. Premier Li emphasized the mutually beneficial and win-win nature of China-US economic and trade relations. He noted that China, as the largest developing country, and the United States, as the largest developed country, should focus on strengthening mutually beneficial cooperation. He warned against the politicization of these issues and the overstretching of security concepts, stating that such actions could adversely affect bilateral relations and even have a disastrous impact on the global economy. Premier Li also expressed China's willingness to engage in more practical and beneficial actions to maintain and develop bilateral relations. On the U.S. side, Secretary Raimondo clarified that the U.S. had no intention of containing China's development or decoupling from it, and expressed the U.S. willingness to maintain communication and normal economic and trade relations with China. Chinese experts have emphasized that maintaining a stable economic and trade relationship between China and the United States is crucial for not only both countries but also the entire world. The meeting comes at a crucial time when both countries are navigating complex economic and geopolitical landscapes, and it signifies a mutual desire to reset and strengthen bilateral relations. Experts stress the importance of tangible actions to achieve this goal, as a stable relationship between the two economic giants has far-reaching implications. Most of Chinese netizens in social media welcomed the visit of high-level U.S. officials, expecting Sino-US cooperation to promote the development of the global economy. However, they also consider the U.S. move paradoxical. Normally, when you have 4 high-ranking officials from the United States visiting in 3-month span, that means the US is really trying to improve and stabilize the bilateral relation. That said, what we see is the United States trying its best to contain China in every way. Carrot and stick, that's what it is. Whenever China asks the White House whether it wants to decouple and sabotage the relations, the Americans send officials to Beijing and be like, "Dude, take it easy, we'll be friends. Can you buy more bonds?" But as soon as the politicians are back in DC, oh boy, they'll be like animals back in the wild forest and starting to spread all those Cold Warish and anti-socialist stuff all over again. A dumping ground for commodities and a scapegoat. That's what the US wants China to be. Economically, the States needs China to absorb, in other words, to buy all the stuff it manufactures, And politically, politicians and power brokers in DC need China to become the new villain so that, first, the military-industrial complex can advocate for more budget, and second, they can act a lot more American by being aggressive towards China and get your vote. Next up, let's turn to the Chinese economy. According to the Ministry of Finance and State Taxation Administration, the securities transaction stamp tax will be reduced by half starting from August 28th. The purpose of the policy is to invigorate the capital market and boost investor confidence, marking the second reduction of securities transaction stamp tax in 15 years. The securities transaction stamp tax can be regarded as a significant tool used by regulatory authorities to manage the market. Currently, the stamp tax rate for stock transactions in China is 0.1 per mil. Following this adjustment, the rate will be lowered to 0.05 per mil, maintaining a unidirectional imposition. Data indicates that there are over 220 million individual investors in the Chinese stock market, constituting 99.8% of the entire investor base. Experts suggest that in terms of the impact of the tax policy, lowering the securities transaction stamp tax rate is beneficial for reducing transaction costs, lightening the burden on a vast number of investors, and reflecting a policy direction focused on tax reduction, fee reduction, benefits to the public, and people's welfare. The move is expected to stimulate trading activity and attract more participation in the stock market by making investment more appealing to a wide range of individual investors. The decision aligns with broader economic goals of promoting economic growth and stability through targeted tax measures. Next up, on September 1st, several nationwide commercial banks in China lowered their deposit benchmark interest rate. It's the second reduction in deposit interest rate in less than 3 months. Interest rate for 1-year, 2-year, and 3-year fixed deposit will be lowered by 0.1%, 0.2%, and 0.25% accordingly. The reduction has been interpreted by many netizens as a policy to stimulate consumption. A portion of public sentiment shifted the focus toward the government, believing it was pressuring the citizens to exhaust their bank accounts. Yet many still maintain an optimistic outlook for the follow-up policies. After reduction, existing mortgage rate will be over 2% higher than deposit interest rate, only pushing the depositors to repay the existing loans instead of consumption. If the government aims to stimulate the economy, this reduction will lead to, correspondingly, a mortgage rate drop in the following days, which will be a relief for many borrowers. And this was not the only new policy. The People's Bank of China also announced on September 1st that to enhance the ability of financial institutions to utilize foreign exchanges, it would cut the foreign exchange reserve requirement ratio by 2 percentage points, from 6% to 4% starting September 15. After the announcement, the offshore exchange rate of the RMB against dollar strengthened, reaching 7.2391 before slightly retreated. Analysts suggest the policy can help onshore dollar liquidity and ease the downward pressure on the yuan, further stabilize the yuan. Many Chinese economists also share the opinion. The foreign exchange reserve requirement ratio mobilized more than tens of billions of dollars, but that holds limited influence to the market, one expert stated. But the message is clear. PBOC is determined to defend yuan with future policies. Some economists predict that since US rate hiking cycle is ending, yuan will slightly appreciate by the end of this year. Besides changes in the foreign exchange reserves, PBOC announced a new policy in the real estate market as well. In a major policy shift, the People's Bank of China and the National Financial Supervision Administration Bureau have decided to optimize the differential housing credit policy across the country. A key aspect of these adjustments is the unification of the minimum down payment ratio policy for commercial individual housing loans. The policy will no longer differentiate between cities implementing purchasing restrictions and those that do not. The minimum down payment ratio for first and second commercial individual housing loans have been uniformly set to no less than 20% and 30% respectively. One might wonder why there is a need to lower the interest rate on existing first home loans. According to officials from the central bank and the National Financial Supervision Administration Bureau, China's real estate market has seen significant changes in supply and demand in recent years. Both borrowers and banks have expressed the need for orderly adjustment and optimization of assets and liabilities. The reduction in the interest rate on existing housing loans benefits borrowers by saving on interest expenses, thereby promoting expansion in consumption and investment. For banks, this can effectively reduce the occurrence of early loan repayments, alleviating the impact on bank interest income. At the same time, it can also curtail the misuse of business loans and consumer loans to replace existing housing loans, reducing potential risks. Last but not least, let's take a look at COVID. The General Customs Administration of China has announced that starting from August 30th, foreign travelers will no longer be required to take COVID-19 testing before entering mainland China. This decision marks the lifting of the last entry requirement related to the global pandemic. In the last 8 months, the reopening has had a positive impact on the domestic tourism sector, which has rebounded to nearly 90% of its pre-COVID levels. Encouragingly, there are also signs of outbound tourism picking up. China's National Immigration Administration reported a total of 168 million arrivals and departures from mainland in the first half of this year, indicating a gradual recovery in travel activities. However, despite these positive trends, the South China Morning Post highlights that the numbers still fall short of those recorded in 2019. Tourism industry analysts attribute this disparity to a key factor: a shortage of international flights. As of April 2023, international airline seat capacity had only recovered to around 37% of pre-COVID levels, as reported by consultancy firm McKinsey. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for watching this episode of China Currents. If you have any thoughts and comments about our show, please reach us at the email address below. I'm Chris, looking forward to hearing from you, and see you next time.